Finally! I'm tired. I just got back from a 3-day, 4-night business trip. A whirlwind trip to Hokkaido. I'm really exhausted. I can't wait to see my daughter. Gracie? Where are you? Mommy's back. I brought some souvenirs. I can't find my daughter anywhere. My 5-year-old doesn't have her own room yet, so she mostly hangs out in the living room and sleeps in our bedroom. I search every nook and cranny in the bedroom and living room. Did she already go to sleep? Mom! I heard a small voice. It's Gracie. Gracie? Where are you? When I step into the hallway, I see Gracie lying there without a blanket. Gracie! What's wrong? Are you feeling sick? Did you collapse? I'm okay. My fever went down. Fever? What does that mean? She had a fever? Why is she in the hallway? Panic is flooding my mind. Why are you here? Because Grandma. Afterward, I listened to what happened while I was away on the business trip and am shocked. And, trembling with anger, I gather a lot of allies to get back at my mother-in-law and husband. I'm 32 years old. I work in sales at my company. We are in our 3rd year of marriage, and my husband is 4 years older, a lawyer. Initially, when we got married, we lived in a condo, just the two of us. But when we had a child, I wanted to continue working in the future, and because my husband's job is very demanding, we started living with my mother-in-law. My father-in-law passed away when my husband was still in junior high school, due to illness, they say. From then on, my mother-in-law raised my husband by herself. The fact that she raised her son to become a lawyer was, without a doubt, her testament, her pride. From my perspective too, my mother-in-law dotes on my husband. While I harbored a slight unease about living with such a parent-child relationship, I attempted cohabitation because I didn't want to quit my job. Our child was a girl. We named her Gracie. My mother-in-law was delighted about the birth of her granddaughter and often took care of her, saying, "She's so cute." I felt relieved about cohabitation because of that, and believed we could get along with my mother-in-law in the future. Gracie grew up quickly, a very charming and adorable child. She drooled a lot, I guess. Since the old days, it's been said that drooling is a sign of good health. She couldn't even wipe it away with a bib. We had to wrap a towel around her. Sometimes, droplets of saliva would fall to the floor. At that time, my mother-in-law casually mentioned something. "Oh, that's dirty. Let's disinfect it with alcohol." I hadn't paid much attention to it until now, but it turned out to be a harbinger of a significant event. Furthermore, when my husband noticed a bit of drool on his shoulder, he would immediately change his clothes. Looking back now, I can understand why he did that. However, these scenes were things I should not have overlooked at that time. In reality, my mother-in-law was a cleanliness fanatic. If I tried to clean, she would notice any missed spots and end up saying something unnecessary, so cleaning was mainly her responsibility. Moreover, my husband, raised by such a mother, was more on the germophobic side. At the time, I thought, I'm lucky someone else handles the cleaning. As time went by, on days without school, I would leave my daughter with my mother-in-law and work full-time. My daughter was a well-behaved child who listened to my mother-in-law. "Could you help me prepare dinner a bit, Gracie?" Gracie stood up straight and said, "Yes." She headed to the bathroom first and began vigorously washing her hands. "Thanks for teaching Gracie," to wash her hands properly with soap before cooking. Martha. I appreciate it. My mother-in-law smiled and replied, "It's the right thing to do, it's just common sense." Is my daughter's expression serious? It seems like she's afraid of something. Nevertheless, she followed my mother-in-law's instructions, donning an apron, mask, and gloves, and stood in the kitchen. "You're cooking in quite the protective gear." "Well, there's this pandemic going on. If something like that were to happen, it would be a big problem. If even one person from our house were to get it would be tough for you with work and school. Plus, my son doesn't have enough experience yet to handle court cases. If he starts coughing during a trial, it would be a mess." Indeed, at that time, there was a widespread outbreak of a certain contagious disease, and infected individuals were being quarantined. Those in close contact with them were also required to self-isolate. At my workplace, many people came in close contact by saying their family members had the disease, leading to a situation where they couldn't leave their homes for a week. This had made work very hectic. The same was happening at my husband's firm, with some lawyers unable to attend court proceedings, and others burdened with extra cases as substitutes. As a result, he was coming home very late these days. Once home, hand washing, gargling, and alcohol disinfection had become routine. I found myself agreeing that taking extra precautions when cooking might be a good idea. Looking back, this was my mistake. One day, during this pandemic, our company found itself unable to conduct business overseas, focusing instead on the Japanese market. I had to take a plane and go to Hokkaido for a 3-day, 4-night trip. This would be the first time I'd be away from Gracie for 4 days. I was filled with sadness. However, my mother-in-law's words of, "Don't worry, have a safe trip," and my husband's, "We promised not to compromise on our jobs. My mom is here, and Gracie will be fine," gave me the encouragement I needed. I asked Gracie, "Gracie, Mommy won't be back for 4 days, but can you hang in there with Grandma?" She briefly glanced at my mother-in-law, and then at my husband, lowered her head for a while, and finally said, "Okay." I interpreted Gracie's actions as actions born out of the loneliness of not being with me. And so, I embarked on my business trip. It was the first time I had been so far away from Gracie, and while I could forget the busyness of work, while working, I couldn't quite get used to the fact that Gracie wasn't beside me before bedtime. I felt lonely and texted my husband multiple times. "Is Gracie okay? Is she already asleep?" "She's fine. She's fast asleep." Believing those words, I worked diligently for 3 days, determined not to waste the time my mother-in-law and husband had spent with her. And when the business trip was over, I thought, I can finally see Gracie. I hurriedly walked home, even though it was already past 9 in the evening. I wondered if Gracie had already fallen asleep. I wanted to see her as soon as possible. In the quiet residential area, my suitcase made loud rolling sounds. "I'm home. I'm tired." I returned from my 3-day, 4-night business trip. I was really tired. I couldn't wait to see my daughter. "Gracie? Where are you?" "Mommy's back. I brought souvenirs." I couldn't find my daughter. My 5-year-old didn't have her own room yet, so she mostly stayed in the living room and slept in our bedroom. I searched every nook and cranny in the bedroom and living room. Did she already fall asleep? It seems like my husband hasn't returned yet. Maybe she's sleeping where my mother-in-law is? I came back, panting, so I was thirsty and went to the kitchen to get some water. Then, "Mom!" I heard a small voice. It was Gracie. Gracie? Where are you? When I stepped into the hallway, there was Gracie lying on the floor without even a blanket. Gracie! What's wrong? Are you feeling sick? Did you collapse? It's summer now, and no matter how hot it is, it's unusual for my daughter to sleep in the hallway without a single blanket. I'm okay. My fever went down. Fever? What do you mean? You had a fever? Why are you in the hallway? If you had a fever, you should be wrapped up in blankets even more. What's going on? Panic was taking over my mind. Why are you here? Because Grandma. Grandma? Just as I was about to ask for more details, my mother-in-law came over. Oh, welcome back. You were late. I'm sorry, I wanted to be back while it was still light out, but it took longer than expected. Thank you for looking after her for such a long time. Oh, it's fine. No problem at all. Did something happen with Gracie? Why is she in the hallway? Gracie got up and quickly hid behind me. I had a bad feeling about Gracie's behavior. Gracie? Yes, she was clever. So, why is she sleeping here like this? Oh, Gracie, you were here? Grandma told you to sleep outside. This is still inside the house. I was bewildered by my mother-in-law's words. Gracie was hiding behind me, holding her breath. My mother-in-law continued, You know, germs like you can be really troublesome in this house. I explained it properly to you, didn't I? Since it's still warm outside, I told you to sleep in the outdoor shed. Why are you inside? I'm sorry, Grandma. I was scared to go outside. It's pitch dark, and I thought there might be ghosts. Gracie was trembling all over. Martha, I can't quite grasp the situation here. My mother-in-law looked at me with a cold stare and began to reveal something horrifying. This child, you see, had a fever. Just a little over 37 degrees. You know, with the current pandemic, it could be a hassle for my son. So, I isolated her. Isolated, you mean outside the room? Oh, outside the room? That is still inside the house. I can't have her stay inside. She might spread respiratory droplets if she coughs. That's why I told her to go to the outdoor shed. This child never listens, despite the discipline. Outside storage? How terrible. It's a tool shed out there, isn't it? There's no electricity, and a little child like this can't sleep alone. So, are you saying it's okay for my son or me to get infected? She's always been a dirty child, you know. Drooling all the time since she was little. Truly dirty. I had to carry disinfecting alcohol with me. That's right. In those days, my daughter drooled a lot. When it dripped onto the floor, my grandmother would disinfect it with alcohol. I now understand that something I didn't think much of was related to all of this. So, what about the heavy gear, the mask, gloves, and bandana, when she was helping in the kitchen? My mother-in-law said, My son had a stomachache once, and this child helped carry dishes at that time. It's her fault. That's how my son got infected with germs. Martha, what are you saying? Do you even know what you're saying? At that moment, a voice came from behind. Oh, welcome back. I clung to my husband desperately. You know, your mother was making Gracie sleep in the hallway. She kept saying scary things like, sleep in the outdoor shed, and... However, my husband's response wasn't what I had hoped for. Oh, that's right. With that one response, I froze. Gracie had a fever, you see. She was coughing a bit too. Neither I nor Mom can afford to get sick. I have work, and Mom is elderly. That's why we made her sleep outside. I was deeply shocked to learn that Gracie was kicked out, not only by my mother-in-law, but also with my husband's consent. What do you mean? Don't you love your own child? I muttered under my breath, suppressing my anger. Of course, I love her. But Gracie still seems to have a lot of germs on her. She drooled a lot from a young age, and was always a bit messy. It's unavoidable, right? It's part of upbringing. What are you saying? Are you out of your mind? Gracie had nowhere else to go, so she was sleeping in the hallway. Is that what adults do? I vented my anger at the two of them who showed no remorse. This is part of upbringing. You wash your hands thoroughly because there are germs. It's basic, just like that. She has a fever and a cough, so she sleeps outside, for the sake of the family's happiness. Why are you so angry? Then at least give her a blanket. She has a fever, and not even putting a blanket on her, while she sleeps on the hard floor, is neglect. A blanket? Haha, don't be ridiculous. It could get contaminated with germs. My mother-in-law laughed as she said that. And terrifyingly enough, my husband was also laughing. Well, let's go to bed now. We have to disinfect that place tomorrow. What a situation. Nothing I say will change these two anymore. I decided to take my daughter and return to my parents' house, even though it was nighttime. As I packed our things, I noticed that a lot of my daughter's clothes were missing. Huh? Gracie, where are those clothes? Oh! Grandma said they were contaminated and threw them away. I'm sorry, Mom, even though you bought them for me. Grandma threw away a lot of things. I felt sorry for my daughter, who had been made to feel miserable. Gracie, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry for making you go through this. Let's leave here. Let's go quickly. With that, Gracie left the house with me, still in her pajamas. My parents were surprised when we returned in the middle of the night, and it was even more surprising considering Gracie was still in her pajamas. They must have been through something. They sensed it and let us in. They laid out warm blankets for us and said, "Just rest today." Gracie slept with a smile on her face in the warm futon. She must have been very tired, because she fell asleep in no time. Watching Gracie's peaceful sleeping face, tears flowed uncontrollably. This child had a fever, yet she wasn't allowed to sleep in a proper bed. After crying for a while, I went to my parents and explained the situation. My parents were even angrier than I was about how Gracie had been treated. They said, "You don't need to go back to that kind of home. Stay here with Gracie." I was grateful for my parents' support. As a mother and daughter, we spent the night discussing what we should do next and what would be best for Gracie. As a result, I decided to divorce my husband. The next day, Gracie woke up in good spirits. Gracie, did you sleep well? Is your body feeling better now? Yeah. She showed me a big smile. I couldn't help but feel regret and guilt for not realizing the mistreatment Gracie had endured for so many years, and how it had stolen her smile. Gracie, Mommy is thinking of parting ways with Daddy. Let's live here from now on. Gracie looked surprised at first, but her expression quickly clouded over for some reason. Gracie, what's wrong? Aren't you happy? If I don't do what Grandma says, I might die from the germs. What should I do? I can't believe she said something like that. She was completely under my mother-in-law's mind control. How had it come to this? pushing Gracie to such a state. To ease Gracie's anxiety, I said, "All right, we won't say goodbye just yet. Let's live here for a while. If your health doesn't worsen because of germs, then we can consider it." Gracie replied with a smile, saying, "Okay." I absolutely can't forgive my mother-in-law and husband for causing Gracie so much suffering. I went straight to a lawyer, and not just any lawyer. I went to the law firm where my husband works. I carefully chose a time when my husband wasn't around, and kept my identity as his wife hidden, while seeking advice. "This is terrible. Let's make sure to demand compensation from your husband and mother-in-law." "Leave it to us," the lawyer said. "Please, I beg you," I replied. I enlisted my husband's friend as my legal representation, thinking he'd never expect his friend to take legal action against him. It was my feeble attempt at resistance. A few weeks later, my phone rang. "Hey, what did you tell them?" By them, my husband was likely referring to his lawyer friends. My husband was surprised to find that the lawyer who had come to his house was actually his friend. Likewise, his friend, the lawyer, couldn't have anticipated that the despicable person involved was his friend. They both seemed taken aback by the situation, but the lawyer friend carried on with his duties. They must have received the certified letter. "Thanks to you, I became the talk of the firm, and can't work anymore. What are you going to do about it? Will you talk to me, through the lawyer?" "What do you mean? Who do you think you are talking to like that? I'm a lawyer too." My husband seemed unusually agitated. "I know that, of course. But the lawyers at your firm are all willing to help me. No matter who hears about this, it sounds like a crazy story. I'll make sure to claim the compensation properly. Please communicate through your lawyer. And remember, you must never meet Gracie. If you do, I'll take legal action against that too." With that, I hung up immediately and blocked his calls. Afterward, with the presence of lawyers, we finalized our divorce. I received a substantial amount of compensation, which must have been quite a burden, even for my high-earning husband. Of course, we also secured ongoing child support payments, and I obtained a legal agreement that he would never see Gracie again. Gracie and I lived happily, supported by my parents. Gracie's heart continued to loosen up, and she was no longer afraid of the germs. In fact, she played with her friends until late, getting all dirty. After that, I even need to remind her to wash her hands before eating sweets by saying, "Let's wash our hands!" with a smile when she's about to eat them. On the other hand, my husband faced the consequences of his actions. Rumors had spread, making it impossible for him to work at his office. Furthermore, the legal field was a tight-knit community, and the rumors had reached other firms, making it challenging for him to find employment. He needed to regain trust first, as trust was essential for his profession. It was fascinating to see when he'd be able to rebuild that trust. As for my mother-in-law, it seemed like she had contracted the prevailing illness. She had a high fever and a persistent cough, but it appeared that my husband didn't provide her with a blanket either. She brought this upon herself, and I hoped she'd be comfortable sleeping in the shed. I imagined my husband probably took care of her fully equipped, with gloves and protective gear. Well, they would have to get along. These were stories I heard from the lawyer. They were no longer relevant to us. I didn't want to get involved any further, and had no desire to inquire. I only wanted Gracie to regain her freedom and live a carefree life. Gracie, who I nicknamed Smiley, because I wanted her to become a child with a beautiful smile, now sported a crinkled face, laughing heartily from the depths of her belly. I was satisfied that I had finally captured Gracie's true smile.